Hello, 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 and welcome to the first video of this channel. If you're new here, then let me be brief. I'm not here to pull my punches. I'm not here to play nice. I'm here to get shit done. And if you try shutting me down, then by all means, I'm just gonna filter you out. Why? Because you've got better things to do with your time, and I've got better things to do with mine. Why waste it arguing and sweating over each other when, frankly speaking, we could easily be focusing on things we much more enjoy? After all, is that not the age of media consumerism we live in? The age where people just empty their brains out onto a screen? I wonder, is that shutting down our ability to think, our ability to react? Probably, but hey, when a world is full of overgrown children, every child will be traumatized. And that's what I'm hoping to prevent. Not like any of you are going to fucking trust me. After all, I'm just a random voice on the internet. You trust me, you're trusting the blind faith of holding on to hope that maybe someone will live up to the expectations when, no, let's be real here. If you keep counting on that, the world is gonna collapse. After all, I'm not here to save your sorry asses. I'm here to just simply say what I need to and survive myself. If I manage to succeed along the way and save a few people, whatever the fuck. If I don't, oh well. Either way, I'm not to be relied upon. So please, don't use me as your excuse, your scapegoat, or your figure of worship. I will tear that down immediately. Because I am just a person. Why am I even thinking someone's gonna do that? I don't know, maybe I'm looking at my own potential and saying, ooh, I've got something here. But that could easily be a delusion, so I can understand if none of you believe that. I'll have to prove it with my actions over time. After all, consistency over time is the best way to measure anything. It's how we measure weight, it's how we measure patterns. It's how we measure one moment to the next and get that illusion of time. Now, why am I making this video? Why am I choosing to speak up now of all times? Because there are two overgrown children in office. One of them's like in the preteen era, and the other one's just a complete overgrown child with a very sad wig. Because I'm gonna be real. Everyone's looking for someone to take the leadership role when all you're looking to have is a leader who you can use as an excuse. That's not supporting the growth of your own country. That's hiding behind your safety lines and sticking to your comfort zones. You've abandoned your people. You've abandoned the foundation of your nation, your integrity and everything. And if you want to make things great again, then you can't just take the easy answer. You can't take the promised shiny hopes of everything that you oh so desperately want. Because what do you think they're trying to blind you with? Those shiny hopes. You need a rugged hope. Something that will survive even the worst of situations and come out the other side still kicking. You need something reliable. Something foundational. That knows how to fight for itself, not just ideals, not just practicalities, not just structures, and not just fancy colors. Because guess what? There's multiple types of psychological shadows out there in the world, and joy oh joy, I just listed off the 4 different directions they can go in. Because we've got bright shadows for the idealistic, for those who are wanting to be a good person instead of a decent person. Then we've got the dull shadows up top, where People prioritize conformity, the ability to live a simple life to such an extent that one unit cannot be displaced from another, which ultimately can make things function somewhat, but that's only if that conformity is A, grounded in realism and willing to acknowledge its faults, and B, protected in a way to where it cannot be exploited. And I'm going to tell you right now, the conformity is being exploited. So you might want to just maybe not count that as sacred. I don't care if you're running off of a rule set or otherwise, but if it's worked this far in your life, if it's helped you out so much, that's great. However, you've got to understand it isn't the end point. It isn't the total reality that solves everything. Because at that point, you're not treating it as an actual rule set. You're treating it as your scapegoat and your excuse. And that's not respecting it. That's just abusing it. People are trying to abuse the reality of things because the reality of things is just a child playing by the rules. And everyone wants to think they're the bigger person, that they can play with the child and get what they want. But really, if you have to shut things down to play with the child, you're not playing with them, you're abusing them. What about the other two categories? Well, that's a great way to go back to where I started from, because that was quite the tangent. There are dark shadows and colorful shadows. Dark shadows are practical. Dark shadows are ever moving. The desire to survive. The will to get through a day and say, hey, I don't have to be the greatest person, but I am still here. And finding a way to be both a decent person and a survivor, a fighter, I think that's pretty cool. Now, the colorful shadows, those are one of the most confusing ones out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean each shadow is necessarily bad. It's just got its own properties and flaws. Because colorful shadows are, well, fun. They're bright, they're vivid, they pull out wonder, make you dream of the future. But in dreaming of the future, you also forget to check it against the reality, and you get lost in ideals. If you try to only use wonder and dreams of the future as a practicality, well, then you're just abandoning people. And if you completely annoy structure and reliability, then it doesn't matter how fantastical you dream, you're just dreaming. And each of these shadows exists opposite of each other as such. Bright shadows contrasting dark shadows, dull shadows contrasting colorful shadows. And in the center we have reality, like a grid. I like to think of this grid as if it's being on a sphere, where there's clarity on one side and murky, muddy confusion on the other. Oh, really, it's such a useful little tool. Oh, and I'm not just saying that there are only shadows out there, by the way. There are also lights, but the very counterintuitive idea is these lights are born from shadows. Isn't that ironic? Where in order for a shadow to ignite and become a light of its own, it needs to have a contrasting light to challenge it. Something to pull it up and say, yeah, things aren't quite as they seem. So prove to me you're not just using an excuse. Prove to me you understand the root of what you're saying. Live it. And the more of a light you become, the brighter you're able to shine, and the more shadows you're able to ignite of every other type, the more you were able to understand reality so much that it's hard to get pulled through the absurdity of reality into the unknown and confusing murkiness. Because that's basically what happens. There's a flow to this orb, and joy oh joy, if you don't know how to dance along the surface of reality, eventually you're gonna slip up, fall to the ground, and get sucked through the center of the orb, all the way to the other side, where you're left confused, wondering, what the fuck is this? I never had to deal with this in my life. Where the fuck did this come from? And so you have to start the process of growing and changing and learning all over again as a person. It's not over just because you got to some stability. You may want to keep your checkpoint, and I can perfectly understand that. But if everyone keeps trying to stay at their checkpoints, we're just going to bring each other down. We're going to collapse each other instead of it taking the values and truths we see around us and learning to notice how they can work together instead of conflict. Because sometimes connections aren't always built in cooperation. Sometimes they're built in contrast and conflict. And that's also a reference point needed for life. Without any peace, without any fight, there will be no peace. Without any peace, there will be no fight. Don't get to run away from the things you don't like. For as much as I wish I could, I've given in to that fact. And if you want to be overgrown children, you want to collapse our civilization down, 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 then just keep running in circles. You'll kill us all eventually. But that's the thing, it's so easy for this to happen because you need a combination of all four of these different shadows to navigate reality. You need to work through every single one, because bright lights can nurture bright shadows and help them stay safe. And then dark lights can help nurture dark shadows and help them stay safe. Just like how dull lights can nurture dull shadows, and colorful lights can nurture colorful shadows. But each respective light and shadow type cannot be ignited, cannot be brought forward by staying in its safety area. In struggling amongst dark shadows and running into a dark light, a bright light can actually be rekindled. A bright shadow can be kindled into a bright light. In running into bright lights, dark shadows can be kindled into dark lights. Same for colorful and dull. We don't need just one type of light, we need all the different types. We need the spectrum. From toxic as hell to wholesome as fuck. We need the spectrum, and if you make a joke out of your enemy, then don't be surprised when they resurge later from the depths of history, to be taken on again as another form, another lifetime consumed by this concept that they believe is oh so perfect. Because that's where the age we're in. The age of concepts, the age of ideas and wisdom and everything conflicting. This wild battleground of ideas trying to outpace each other to see who's going to survive and who won't. It's an ecosystem of its own. So are you going to let yourself be consumed by all the concepts out there, or are you going to start finding out what you are? Are you going to let go of that safety blanket and start struggling? Because I think doing that, even if it's at the cost of facing fears and pain, I think that's worth doing. In any case, if I ever post another video on here again, you'll know I'll have survived. If I do die, though, try your best to make use of what I've shared. Try to understand it in a way where you don't reject information. Because it's in isolating that one can survive, but it's also in isolating that one can starve. You can't recover through isolation alone. You gotta either work through yourself or spend time with others to let them help you work through things that you don't yet understand. Don't keep drinking the apathy. It's just an emotional alcohol numbing you out. That's all I need to say. Peace.